Ripples of Faith. Chapter 2. The Notebooks. The drive back to the apartment was a blur. Images flashed through Adam's mind. Sharp, disjointed fragments of the funeral, the church, the coffin, the scent of lilies, the sound of soil hitting wood. Each one lingered for only a moment before giving way to the next, leaving him overwhelmed. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. When he finally unlocked the door to the apartment, the silence inside was heavy, thick with absence. The place that had once been warmed by his mother's presence now felt unbearably cold, as though her laughter and footsteps had been stripped from its very walls. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Adam walked into her room. It was untouched, frozen in time, waiting for her return. They had only moved here 6 months ago. He had wanted a fresh start for them both after he landed his first job. But everything had changed so quickly. The bed remained neatly made, a folded sweater resting where she had left it. Adam ran his fingers over the smooth surface of her dresser. She left for the hospital that day and never stepped through this door again. Driven by impulse, Adam began searching through her possessions. He wasn't sure what he was looking for. Something to feel closer to her, perhaps, or proof that she had really been there at all. In the drawer by her bed, he found small mementos, photographs of him as a child, a hairbrush, a faintly scented scarf. Then he saw it, a notebook, worn and familiar, bearing his name exactly as he had written it as a child. Beneath it, he found another, smaller, nameless, yet unmistakably hers. He pulled it out, his heart beating faster. He opened the first page, and there in her careful handwriting were the words, "Dear God." Adam froze. He stared at the words, both familiar and alien. My mom wrote letters to God? The realization hit him with a strange mixture of wonder and sadness. He held both notebooks tightly against his chest, as though trying to anchor himself in this new discovery. Then, with careful steps, he walked to his room. Adam lay on his bed, the 2 notebooks resting beside him. His eyes traced the faint patterns on the ceiling, unfocused, the weight of his grief pressing down on his chest like an anchor. Mom is gone, but I'm still here. He murmured to the silence, the words fragile on his lips. Her voice echoed in his mind, soft but steady, a memory that refused to fade. Do things that build your self-esteem without looking down on others. Be humble, that's how you learn. Nobody is perfect, but everyone has something to teach you. She had always been like that, unshakable, loving, focused on even the smallest details that mattered. For her, life was not about surviving or earning money, but about respect, purpose, and care. Her words resonated now, settling deep within him, a reminder that grief couldn't erase. Her voice is still with me, he thought. The weight of loss pressed heavily on him still, but beneath it was the faintest flicker of something else, a spark. She would want me to keep going. Sitting up, Adam's eyes fell on the 2 notebooks. He reached for his own first. Its pages were creased and yellowed with age, yet just holding it brought him back to when he was 7 years old, sitting on his small bed in a cramped apartment, struggling to make sense of the world. Back then, life had started to take a different turn. Adam and his mother had moved to a new neighborhood after she could no longer afford their old place. It was a harsher environment, and Adam, with his calm nature and good grades, had quickly become an easy target. He came home from school each day angry and defeated, confused by the cruelty of other children. The bullying seemed relentless, whispers in the halls, accusations that got him into trouble, laughter at his expense. One afternoon he burst into their small apartment, his face flushed with frustration. "Why is this happening to us?" he demanded. "What's wrong with our life? Why is it so difficult when most people seem fine?" His mother paused, the question seeming to weigh on her. Then softly she said, "This is our destiny." Adam frowned. "And who decides that? Can we ask him to be kinder?" Her expression shifted, her eyes softening as though a thought had just occurred to her. "Yes," she said with a small, knowing smile. "We can tell him." "Tell who?" Adam asked, still fuming. God, of course, she replied simply. She disappeared into a drawer and returned holding a blank notebook. Here, she said, handing it to him. Write a letter to God. Tell him what's troubling you. Trust him to help. Adam's anger faltered, replaced with confusion. Why should I tell him? Doesn't he already see everything? Her lips curved into a faint smile, though her voice remained firm. Yes, he knows. But it's better to tell him yourself. Try it and see what happens. That night, after dinner, Adam sat on his bed, notebook in hand. The small room his mother had crafted for him, a shared apartment turned cozy refuge, seemed to watch him expectantly. A soft light shone above his bed, illuminating the blank page before him. How do you even write to God? He wondered, twirling the pencil between his fingers. They don't teach this at school. He sighed and decided to start simply, Dear God, I hope this letter finds you well. Then he paused, scowled, and crossed it out. What am I saying? He's God. He's always fine. The memory of his younger self brought an unexpected smile to Adam's lips. He chuckled quietly, the sound startling in the silence of his room. I was sharp even then, he thought, shaking his head fondly. For a moment, the memory lifted the weight pressing on his chest. He was back in the present, the notebook warm in his hands, a tangible connection to both his past and his mother. His gaze drifted back to the second notebook, his mother's. Gently he picked it up, holding it as though it were something fragile and sacred. Her letters to God. The thought filled him with a quiet wonder. What had she written? What burdens had she carried alone, in silence? Adam hesitated. He wasn't ready to open it yet, not tonight. Instead, he lay back on his bed, placing the notebooks beside him. His exhaustion finally caught up to him, and for the first time in days, the tears didn't come. As he drifted off to sleep, he thought of his mother, of her love, her strength, and the quiet wisdom she had passed down to him. Her voice hasn't left me, he thought, it never will.